Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we are doing a different type of video. I'm going to give you 5 book recommendations that are quick reads. So these are all books that are under 300 pages. They're all books that I've really enjoyed, and we're going to be going from the shortest to the longest. So if you're looking for a palate cleanser, if you're looking for a nice quick fun read to slot in between some chunky books that you're reading at the minute, here is a list of recommendations for you. So in at number 1 is an author who you might not expect to be on a list of quick reads, and this is Brandon Sanderson. And I am going to recommend you here a wonderful science fiction novella from Brandon Sanderson. This is Snapshot. Snapshot actually comes in at 123 pages, so it is a short and snappy novella. So in Snapshot, we follow Anthony Davies. He's a detective who is on snapshot duty. So in this world and society, they have the ability to create and recreate the events of a specific day that has passed. And he is a detective who goes into this snapshot of a previous day to go and find out what has happened, to try and solve crimes that have happened in the past by reliving events in that world, essentially. Often his job as a cop in the snapshot is pretty mundane. It's following suspects, it's finding evidence on where it's been discarded so they can find it in the real world. It's pretty mundane often, but it is an interesting concept, having this idea of a snapshot world that the detectives can work in and see things as they unfold in real time, so to speak. As you would expect from Brandon Sanderson, the world is pretty interesting. I like the take on science fiction that we have here. As well as that, it is definitely twisty. I really like the plot, and I love the way that Brandon Sanderson slowly reveals what's going on. It's impressive for me that someone who writes such huge and vast fantasy novels can still distill a decent story in such a short page time. I would highly recommend Snapshot if you've not read any of Brandon's science fiction. I think it's a very good novella. It's not going to be super groundbreaking, but I really enjoy the way that he's done it, and the way that he tells the story is exquisite. A very, very accomplished storyteller, and even showing that in such a small page time. My next recommendation for you is another author that I love, and this one is actually a pretty new release that came out this month, and that is Ogres by Adrian Tchaikovsky. Ogres is only 144 pages long, and in it we follow Torkel. He is the son of a headman, so he is a human in this world that is run and ruled by ogres. So in it, the ogres are the landlords, they are the masters, they are the master race essentially, and as a human, Torkel is subservient to them. He is very much a lesser class and a lesser race, and in it we follow him as he struggles with that, as he comes to grips with his position in the world after raising his hand to one of the ogres, one of the landlords. It is more science fiction than fantasy probably, but is a very interesting take on this idea of a subservient race. It is written in the second person, which can be relatively jarring, but I really enjoyed it. I think that Adrian Tchaikovsky used that second person narrative really well, and I highly recommend this as a really solid read for you if you can get your hands on it. If you do want to know more about Ogres, I would recommend going and having a look at my review of it, which there should be a card for up in this corner over here, I believe. Next up, we're moving on to books that would probably be more rightly classed as novels rather than novellas. And the first one of these I'm going to be talking about is the self-published fantasy work by Elan Marché and Christopher Warman, and it is called The Seasons of Albion. The Seasons of Albion comes in at 213 pages long, and it is interesting in the fact that it is not a singular full-length novel. It is 4 short stories, probably not even novella-length stories, which follow 4 separate characters in this world of Albion. It is in a forest setting, and as such we follow these people as they go through different cycles of the year. We follow through 4 different seasons in the Forest of Albion. It is really well done. I picked it up on the recommendation of Steve Talks Books and Stuff, and it was an absolute hit for me. It was one of the biggest surprises for me of my reading in 2021, how much I loved this book. I'd never heard of it. I picked it up with no expectations, and I gave it 5 stars. I think that the way that emotions are conveyed, the themes that are built on, and the way that it delivered emotional gut punches to me in such short, bite-sized stories, I found incredible. The characters were highly relatable, they were highly flawed in many ways, but I very much understood them and I felt seen by some of their struggles, and it is It's very Daniel Abraham. If you've read The Long Price Quartet, it has that Shakespearean tragic element to it, and it's just really beautifully written. I cannot wait for more books from Christopher Warman and Alain Marché. I think this was absolutely incredible, and you should absolutely go and read this. Whether or not it sounds appealing to you, I beg you to go and buy this book, go and read it, support this self-published fantasy book, because it is just absolutely beautiful. Next up is a book that you might not expect from me. This is not fantasy, and this is not science fiction, and it is not even a modern release. This is a classic, you would say, and it is by Daphne du Maurier, and it is Frenchman's Creek. Frenchman's Creek comes in at about 260 pages, and it is really a historical fiction, historical adventure. We are following Donna, who is feeling cooped up in the court in London, and so she goes out to her country estate in Cornwall and gets tangled up with a French pirate. And yes, Daphne du Maurier, the author of Rebecca and My Cousin Rachel, these brooding and dark and heavy literary fiction works, is writing a pirate adventure romance. Yeah, literally a pirate adventure romance, and it's really good. It's really good. I gave this one 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. It isn't really my cup of tea in terms of style and in terms of genre, and yet it was still really, really good. If you'd like a more classic palate cleanser, I would highly recommend this, especially if you like that kind of adventure, pirates, romance, all those things. I think Donna is an interesting protagonist. I don't love her. I think she has lots of flaws, but I think that is realistic, and that's part of the joy of it, is dealing with her flawed character as well as her interesting character quirks as well. If you've not read any du Maurier and you want a light-hearted, easy read to get yourself acquainted with her as an author, this book will work for that really well. I have not read any of the du Maurier. I am looking forward to getting to Rebecca at some point, but that has not happened yet. But I did really enjoy Frenchman's Creek. And my final recommendation for you here in this quick reads list is another new release, came out in the middle of March. This is a science fiction book by John Scalzi, and it is called The Kaiju Preservation Society. This I only finished this week, and I really, really enjoyed. It felt very fast-paced, it was very enjoyable. As John Scalzi says in his author notes for this book, it is essentially a pop song. Yeah, after the horribleness that has been 2020 and 2021 and everything that's going on in the world, he couldn't write a dark and brooding fantasy. He instead ended up writing this light-hearted, enjoyable, fast-paced science fiction book. In it, we follow Jamie, who is our protagonist. They are working for a food delivery app when the COVID-19 pandemic hits in New York City. They are desperate for work, and on meeting an acquaintance when delivering some food, they are offered this chance of working for this organisation. This organisation is called the KPS, and all that Jamie knows about them is that they work with large animals, and they're an animal rights organisation. Now, this organisation actually travels to an alternate dimension, Earth, where there are no humans on this earth. It's slightly warmer, and it is full of kaiju, humongous, I mean absolutely enormous creatures, basically habitats in and of themselves. They're barely even animals anymore. And the point of the Kaiju Preservation Society is to protect these species, to look after them, but also to prevent them from traveling over to real Earth. So these creatures, think Godzilla, yeah? This is the kind of thing that we're talking about. This was absolutely a pop song of a sci-fi book, as John Scalzi put it. I really enjoyed it. It was super light-hearted, super enjoyable. It didn't feel too deep or too dark. Particularly interestingly, I don't think we're actually given the gender for Jamie. Now, Jamie is a very gender-neutral name. I don't think we ever get referred to them as a he or a she or even a they. So very interesting. John Scalzi has been known for doing this before, so you can put your own interpretation, your own spin on that. But I really enjoyed this. Again, if you want to see a review for that, there should be a card up. I believe it's on this side. Go check that out. I only released that the other week. So there you go. 5 books that are quick reads that should be an enjoyable, fast-paced read in between some of the big, chunky books that we often read. I hope you found that a suitable array. There's some science fiction, some fantasy, as well as some classics. So yeah, a bit of a different take from me. I hope that that's been enjoyable. I hope that's been interesting and informative. And if you want to see more of my videos, there should be another one up here for you to go and watch right about now. I'll see you guys again soon.